America. So I end up in going back and forth from Michigan to South America, and so I have firsthand knowledge of what's going on in South America and immigration and things like that. So I have vast knowledge of what Americans are not being told, or the perceptions of the countries in the global South. Um, Often uh, talked about as if they're lesser than, or terrible places to be, and it's actually not the truth at all. Which is rather interesting.
So it's something that we've heard since the as old as time, right? Propaganda. So propaganda is universal,
Yes.
right? This is just as much as the American public is being dumbed down. America is setting the standard globally. So it's just baffling to me that people think like, if we're heavily propagandized here, like this is the height of propaganda, why would you think lesser developed countries are not facing propaganda from us, but their own, corrupt leaders as well? And propaganda is a bit of a misnomer the way people look at it. It's not always bad, right? Because propaganda needs a
Right.
rebuttal, right? It needs a retort. So my thing is, whatever, when they say fight fire with fire, right? They don't say fight fire with sand. So if someone is propagandizing you, you need to fight propaganda with propaganda. But in your own propaganda, you have the truth on your side, assuming that you're genuine person, and want to see change for the good, right? It's just like a propaganda. I always
Right.
say it like this: it's like a firearm, right? You can use that same firearm to go kill an innocent person, or you can use that firearm to defend your family from an invader, foreign or domestic. It's the same firearm. It's just how it's used and how it's applied. So propaganda can be used to bludgeon, or it can be used to build. So it's just all in a matter of application, and obviously context and intent behind it. What do you say to that?
Oh, absolutely. Um, Everything you said is right on point with the the propaganda that we're being fed. When we're going to some of your topics, we're going to um, places that, quite frankly, it's coming from everywhere, and you have to, it's up to us to really do a good filtering of it and listen to it all, right? Because some people, you know, it, there is some truth in multiple in in multiple different takes, or some propaganda. If that makes sense. That's um, I'm not the
No,
best with words,
no, I
but
understand. I understand, and so this is why this is a dialogue and discourse. We help each other, assist, throw alley oops. So what you said was, it has to be listened to. That is a part that many don't want to do because of it's annoying. Some people would say it's cringeworthy. It's infuriating. Sometimes it's depressing. But that's why it would behoove you to have a network and an infrastructure where some people love to listen to that and say, hey, did you hear what so and so said? And then they bring it to you in a more digestible manner, right? That somebody could go on a three hour long tirade and you say, I'm not sitting through that. But that person that had that 3 hour tirade, he has influence over politics or over some sort of, oligarchic uh institutions, right? So that wasn't just a regular 3 hour tirade. There were some nuggets in there that needed to be dissected and brought to, like, hey, did you hear what they're trying to do? With this, do you hear how they're trying to attack us, how they're trying to censor us, how they're trying to surveil us? But if you just look at it like, oh man, I ain't sitting through 3 hours, and I get it, right? Most of us have better things to do than to sit through it. But I do believe, it should be the collaboration, because I know there's he's a content creator. His name is Case Study QB. And he always clips up things from like CNN, Fox News. Here, this politician said that in a digestible manner. He'll give you a 2 minute clip, a 5 minute clip, a
Mm.
10 minute clip, and many people react to just the clip. He takes out pretty much the pertinent part of what's being said, and then brings it to the public discourse. Because, like you said, with the propaganda, if it just goes unanswered, it becomes truth, and then it becomes law, and then it becomes the norm, right? So people just throwing stuff out there. There's a saying that the lie is halfway across the world before the truth gets out of bed. So, using like a street terminology, right? If somebody is saying, man, Brian is a snitch, and you just like, man, whatever, man, that's propaganda, I ain't gonna address that. Then people like, hey, he didn't say anything, he must be a snitch. Now it doesn't make it true, but that's what the perception is going to be. And if you don't defend yourself, now the truth is that you're a snitch, even though that's not the truth. So it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. So I just say that it has to be rebutted and retorted in a digestible, intelligible, and an eloquent manner, because ultimately it's a battle, right? Propaganda, thought, experiments are a battle of the minds. Go ahead, bro.
Right, absolutely, and that feeds into the topics that you sent. With the clicks, likes, influencers, um,
Yeah, pick it up from
social
there.
media, things like that.
That'll be the
Yeah,
first
it,
topic.
it,
Go
it
ahead.
feeds into all that. Right. So all that propaganda feeds into like each different group from that main influencer, which can be very harmful. For example, now go into say, these are perfect examples to relate to would be the MAGA right, the woke right influencers that li- literally cause more damage than than anything else. And that and then also too going into say example white and black American relations. The black Americans that or the other people that are identify as black when they jump into the fold with the right wing woke right influencers, it it exasperates a problem even worse. So, for example, for a guy like me that likes to that I understand Black Americans. I I listen. I learn. I enjoy engaging in conversations. There's so many similarities. Working together as a group just makes complete sense. However, it's very difficult for many Black Americans to hear. I don't represent. I don't have a big enough account. I'm a little person, but they hear they hear these big name influencers flying off on a tangent, and guess what? They represent everybody, even though they half their followers are bots. All
Bingo.
they're it's a cult like setting with half these idiots, and then too, like it's the same for you guys too. You know,
I,
we
w- I was just
us,
about to say
there's a
that.
lot of
Oh,
yeah, common white folks like myself. You know, they don't understand. They're thinking that the person on TV that's talking down to them, that's talking say say this is a perfect example, using reparations as a weapon on TV for for black identifying political pundits and politicians to say it as a jab or as a talking point versus most common white people, they're not talking to the grassroots like I do. So we both have these people representing us, but they don't represent us. And that's the problem. That's why I love talking with the grassroots. The grassroots, if but my motto is if that person has more white, if that black American has more uh, white followers than than black American followers, they're not the ones to listen to. That's the
Bingo.
way it goes for me. That's why
No,
I
that's facts.
love
You
engaging with
you
the
you cooking right
rest.
now.
And not to fly off on a tangent, but I there are there's both sides of the coin. Obviously, you have your people that are picked to represent the community, even though they don't represent your community. We got right wingers on this side that's they're just you know actually really uninformed, and God, I don't know how anybody can listen to them, but that's just the way it is. Um, but man, it's breaking those things apart where the right people are talking and connecting like we are now. And I've tried in the past and gotten declined from some spaces. But that's the way it goes. If more people talk, engage like we do, then we can kind of move forward. And a lot of the things I say, and maybe people look at my tweets and stuff. Where does he get this stuff? I I do one thing that's different from say someone like Ann Coulter or someone like Jane Elliott or some of these other people that are just I prop up and I will acknowledge and say these are the people I listen to, like Naeem Way, Marcel Dixon, Ali from BTP. I listen to Tariq Nasheed. I listen to Yvette from Idos. I I listen to everybody because it's important to learn and listen to the people that are actually in the community fighting for their community. So sorry to go on that tangent, but I like to prop out the people that actually that learn, and they've allowed me to speak in their spaces like you are now, and that's huge. You know, that's a big Friedman support.
Yeah, man, that's what Tariq calls the Majara spirit. But yeah, you did go on a tangent, but it was terrific, man. You was cooking the whole time. So let me touch on some of those things that you talked about. I get what you're saying too in terms of the rejection, and I think it's a natural rejection due to the historical atrocities and precedents. Even if it wasn't on you, is a bit of a collective punishment and a collective assessment. Same thing that people do, with black people, how you were saying, even though this people, these people don't represent the entire collective, but they do represent enough of it for them to frame and propagandize and say, look, this represents the entire community. I'm not really a supporter of Jane Elliott because Jane Elliott is the type that will tell you everything's wrong, but then when you ask her about reparations, she doesn't support it, and then she acts like she does support it, but only if Native Americans get it. And she already knows that there's been a bunch of white infiltration of the Native Americans, i.e., Elizabeth Warren getting those benefits, and that's why Trump was calling her Pocahontas. And Coulter will say some real stuff, and I respect Ann Coulter because she's anti-black, but she calls, she'll say it up the middle, and she will at least say if reparations are going to be paid out, they are owed to black people, not immigrants, not trans, not any of that. So I do like and respect that of and culture. And even if somebody is anti-black, I can respect them coming up the middle and saying it. Look, I don't like you. I think you guys are low IQ and lazy. I respect that. Of course, I disagree with that. But what I don't like is that people are saying you guys are lazy and low IQ, and then they try to frame it as a cultural thing and that it's just fatherless homes and all this stuff, and all of these things could get debunked. And then when they do get debunked, they start bringing up mud huts in Africa, even though there's modern places in China and other Asian places that have mud huts today, and they're not. And some of the mud huts look better than the houses that people live in today. So I even have a retort against the mud huts. When you talked about the grassroots, people don't want to talk to the grassroots because the grassroots are typically the true pulse of any said community. And what they want to do is neutralize the pulse and tell us, here, let us pick your leader. They don't want us to pick a presidential candidate. They want to say, here, this is Obama. This is the best we got. Here, this is Byron Donald. Here, this is this APAC puppet. So these people actively avoid the grassroots. I always come at things from a facetious manner if I want to kind of argue and debunk certain points. So when there's the Charlie Kirks and the Tim Pools, hey, you think that I'm just a low IQ, lazy savage, right? Then this should be red meat for your base to bring me on and just destroy and debunk me in a debate, right? But they won't ever do that. They won't bring Marcel on. They won't bring Tariq on. There's other people. And and those are some of the prominent voice. Tariq is a prominent voice. Won't you bring on some of the, just bring on me, right? Like I would be part of the proletariat. I'm not making millions of dollars like Tim Pool, right? It should be easy for him, Patrick, Bozo, David, or any of these people. But you notice they don't do that. They bring on comfortable, reliable Negroes who they know what they're gonna say. Then they rail against identity politics. But what do they talk about all the time? Identity politics. Identity politics is woke. That's why, since
Nope.
they co-opted
Yep.
the word woke, which had a very positive meaning in the black community, and it wasn't from BLM. It came way before that in like the 60s, but they co-opted that. So that's why I always use the term woke right. One of my friends was like, oh man, the Jews came up with that term. I don't give a fuck who came up with the term. If they don't care about the origins of woke and they want to change it to CRT and other stuff, I'm going to continue to call them, the woke right, but there's a lot of people that will think, and it is unfortunate because when we're trying to actually coalition build, I understand, like, you got to clean up your own house first, right? So I need to clean up my house and you need to clean up yours before I can invite you over. Some are just saying like there should just be absolutely no invitation at all, and I'm not part of that camp because I already know that we've been locked out systemically of economic educational institutions and stuff. So I do believe in a form of isolationism, so we can, like, you know get the things that we need to get together. But I'm not with the complete just shutting out. But there are litmus tests, right? Like if I was trying to get into Patriot Front or a white nationalist group, they wouldn't just let me in. They would need to. You would have to prove, that you're anti-black. They would. I would go through a hazing process. And I'm not saying anyone needs to do that to join our collective movement, but that's where a lot of the skepticism comes in, because people want to see, have you been just like jumping into a gang, even though these things are not directly correlated. A lot of the logic holds, right? Here, man, if you're a really a gang member, you got to ride for the set. You got to get jumped in, like you got to physically get beaten to see, are you really tough enough to withstand what comes with being one of these gang members. And I think a lot of the rejection is like, yeah, with all of the COINTELPRO and all this stuff, it's like, is this dude just trying to be, the polite guy to come in and feed intel back. And I get it, because on the flip side, people could be thinking the same thing too. Like, oh, I want to join this golf course. Is like, yeah, is he just one of those ghetto thugs? So a lot of people have their preconceived notions and they just don't come out of the void. But someone has to eventually break through it. And I'm about showing and proving. I don't care how many times someone retweets something. I don't care what someone says rhetorically. That rhetoric needs to be matched with actions and financial backing, because people they when they support something, they talk about it, they act on it, and they finance it. So it has to be all three of those, so just like, I'll take something as simple as a PlayStation 5, right? People talk about it, they act on it by going to the store, and then they finance it by buying it. So it's like, hey, if you really support this community, find someone that you support, and make it doesn't necessarily need to be a donation. It can be a contribution for their services or whatever. Or, hey man, look, I know this dude's car is broken down. I'm a mechanic. It just needs to change an alternator. I'll go change it for him for free. That has monetary value to it. So like, yeah, you have the skills to change it and it was free to you, but it actually cost something. So there are ways for us to show, prove, and build. And I just would like to see more of that. But if since you know foundational Black Americans are on edge from helping everyone, caping for everyone, and then still people want to call us niggers and then talk about low IQ, CRT, DEI, even though we don't benefit from any of this shit now. That's why
Right.
the the sentiment is just hold your own nuts. And sometimes it can be harsh, and maybe in some instances to a fault, but ultimately the delineation and the isolationism to focus on these are our flaws, and this is what we need to turn into a building block, right? That our stepping stones are going to turn into building blocks. So that's where it comes from a lot. So that's why I try to talk to people, vet people, to see, like, we may have individual allies, but there are no collective allies. So I'm willing to work with individuals, because some of my uh, OGs told me, like Professor Black Truth, groups don't have allies, they have interests. And that's the same thing with these immigrant groups. The same thing with the trans.
Mm-hmm.
The trans groups don't have allies. They have interests. They're trying to advance their agenda. So they will
Right.
ally with people to advance their interests, but collectively, I mean, the entire group, so people kind of, uh, misconstrue that whole concept. But we can move on to the next topic unless you wanted to add anything from what I just said.
Well, we can go into the next topic with what you had dropped in there, because when you made the comment about you hear, the people on the right, I don't say the right. When I say the right on this topic, it's the far right, and it's the Jews. We completely discredit any any legitimate argument we have when we point to one particular group and blame everything on them. And I've noticed that pattern where, oh, we can team up with these different groups. We'll we can convince them through these statistics and numbers that the Jews affected them more than everybody else. No, we had our hands in that too. Not particularly all of us, but in a way, our past generations have done the same wrongs. So if you're not, for example, this that seems to be the Nick Fuentes, the far right. Uh, I don't. It's a shame, but they identify as Catholics. You know, if these people can't even look at the coastal Catholics that literally vote all Democratic, all liberal policies, all all these terrible policies that they affect them. Well, look at your own people in your own church. that's that's the part that they don't understand. You know, look within your house, clean out your house first, and make the effort to change, then 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 move on. But I'm glad you brought that up because it really isn't fair. I mean, for example, the Jews, I have a belief, for example, Gaza and Palestine, and those people should be helped. Well,
I
great Jewish
agree.
journalists are the ones that educated us on that. It wasn't Christian right that was doing investigations on the poor Muslims and Palestinians and the
Yeah,
Christians in
Norman
Palestine.
Finkelstein, isn't he a Jew? His family,
Right.
I think his
Max
family
Blumenthal,
survived
Aaron
the
Mate. Yep.
exactly. All of them are Jews.
Yes. Yes. So to literally
Hold on,
you
is
couldn't
Glenn
possibly.
Greenwald a Jew?
Yep. So anything Nick Fuentes says regarding the wrongs that have been done to Palestinians and all these other groups, guess what? They all come from Max Blumenthal, basically. Glenn Greenwald's obviously an awesome journalist. Norm Finkelstein, Aaron Mate's father.
Do you know who
I
Katie
think he.
Halper is? Katie Halper is a Jew.
I you know I I've heard of the name. I don't remember if I've seen her content.
Yeah, she's
But
more of like a leftist Jewish person. But she's solid though. I do like Katie Halper, but she's Jewish. And then isn't Dave Smith Jewish?
yes, yeah. So
so, so it's like it's the Jews, and then you just you getting all
right.
the info for them. Go ahead, bro. It's hilarious, bro.
Yeah. I mean, literally, like you hear these talking points. I'm like, Max Blumenthal covered this years ago. Matter of fact, my I used to be that MAGA guy that's Israel forever, you know, and we need to defend Israel. And I had two Jewish guys basically team up on me on Twitter and call me a MAGA idiot, and I'm like, well, this is crazy. I'm like, these guys are Jewish. They're I'm confused here. And then I did start years ago when I first joined Twitter, and I still do. Follow like RBN and Savvy Sabs and stuff like that. And that's how I actually learned about these different people and journalists that cover that situation. So I educated myself on that, and um, I don't know where I was going with that, but it was really quite fascinating to get all this information from actually Jews that have researched and studied it, the topic, you know.
So hold on, let me ask you this because you said you started out and you were that MAGA guy, like Israel forever. And somebody I know, they were talking about, oh, I love Scott Jennings. And I just recently, I think it was yesterday, Scott Jennings just went to Israel to bend the knee and kiss the ring. And, he's always talking about how Jewish students are being attacked on campus. Not only that, he worked with Mitch McConnell somehow. He's from Kentucky, but so I know that is really embedded in the right wing psyche and the MAGA thing. But where did it come from? Was it politically influenced? Was it family influence? Because I noticed they use a lot of the religious zealots to kind of shame you into you're unblinded or I'm unyielding is what I meant to say. Unyielding support for Israel. Like where did that come from? Was it like the church, the politicians, the family? I'm
Yeah,
always fascinated to know.
it it comes from a little bit of everything. With but here's the thing. Most importantly is affirmation from corporate media. So if you're telling people that you're telling people, hey, this is the way we got to support Israel, and then you turn on Fox News. Well, yeah, what we're being told is right 100%. And then also too, it's even the same way for the left as far as the Democrats. CNN during that time period of around when it started, and MSNBC and a couple others and things like that. They it the same way. So it's both sides of the coin. I'm not you know I'm not anti-Israel. I'm just not supportive. The problem is a lot of people like to criticize, but have no solution. A lot of people, you hear a lot of leftists, this F Israel, this or that. Well, okay, what's your solution? Let's move all the Jews to the United States. Okay, well, let's do it. Oh, you know.
Yeah,
So
no, that's where I'm at. Just give them their own state, right? If Israel is their own state, hey, just give them Wyoming or Montana, and then, like you said,
West
no, no,
Virginia
no,
is
no.
down on the dumps, my friend. Send them all to West Virginia, the old
Let the
coal
Jews
mining
have
town.
that.
Let them have it. You know,
Like what's the difference? At least it will stimulate our economy. Israel getting free health care, and Israel giving their people free college and all this stuff. That's great for Israelis. That does nothing
right,
for us. And then they try to say, oh well, they're giving us information. They're not giving me information. That's for Raytheon, Boeing, Northrop Grumman. That's not for me. And then they framing it as was for America's interest. Remember, I said
yeah,
earlier, groups don't have allies, they have interests. Don't you always hear the politicians say, well, it's in America's interest? And so they frame it as, oh, well, you're American, so it's in your interest. No, it's not. It's for the military industrial complex interest. So at least if you're going to do that, hey, revive West Virginia or Montana. Then that's where the flaming actual anti-Semites come out. Like they are kind of overblowing that how the Jews are just super oppressed, but Twitter in these social media platforms, they amplify anti-Semitic memes. Every day is black
right,
people getting called nigger. Bro, they're showing fight videos from like 2001. And you got some fucking dude in that Asian dude that's not even here from Malaysia sharing fight videos from 10 years old.
was it
Uh,
Ian or something like that?
yeah, Ian Miles Chong. The
Yeah,
dude's never been to America, but all he does is complain about black people in America. Millions of followers, mainly white people, jacking off to the anti-black porn. But it's like, dude,
yep,
you just said the
yeah,
Jews control everything. So why are you blaming some powerless thug in Chicago? And not only that, if I'm living in an affluent area in California, why, as a black man, a foundational black American freeman, why the fuck are you telling me to answer for some kid that did a drive-by in Oakland or Baltimore? And I say, okay, cool. I got a method. It's called Cecil, Sesl. Same energy, same logic. Keep the same energy, apply the same logic. So that means all of those meth out junkies that's raping and incest and the hillbillies, you have to answer for that, right? You need to
right.
be accountable for that. But then they say, no, no, you can't generalize. It's like, that's literally what you just did.
That's and we're on the topic on to branch off into a different topic. You know, I I'm a big fan of the delineation because we can start breaking down different groups. And what I use it what I use it a little bit differently from my side is I like to break it down and explain the different things, and that's how I use my arguments as far as to counteract to get people to look at what we have done, say, institutionally, um, socially, and in the corporate world, have affected others, especially the freedmen community. Um, the is to break down and say, okay, what we're running these things at the same time, and they're not all Jews. So you got coastal Catholic Italians and Irish that ran the East Coast in the West Coast. So we, when I point these factors out, that's when they get quiet and then they stopped interacting, which hopefully,
No,
my message is
they get
hopefully it gets
violent.
them thinking.
They usually get verbally aggressive when you say that, because what you just said was factual. It doesn't mean that Jews didn't play a part. And then they start talking about Africa, and then they start telling you that you're afraid of the Jews or who's paying you. Like, bro, could you refute what I said? If you can't refute what I said, then that's okay. It's if I say 2 plus 2 is 4, there's really nothing to refute. So you can get mad and call me a name, but the point still remains. So that's really where they're left at. I debunk
Right,
people all the time too, and no one is saying that. Hey, because it's kind of like a fine dance, right? You niggers were slaves. We conquered you. Okay, cool, right? I come from a slave lineage. So that means you come from a slave, a slave trading lineage, right? That you are raping, pillaging, and plundering, right? So you want
right,
me to own that I come from a descendant of slaves, but you don't want to own that you come from a descendant of savagery, debauchery, filth, famine, and I seen you getting on an exchange with somebody on Twitter that had me hilarious. That's not everyone's lineage. You can see, just like right now, there's the Elon Musk, the Jeff Bezos and stuff, right?
right.
Not everyone was coming from that lineage. The majority, the overwhelming majority, right? You said I'm gonna come from slave lineage, fine, right? You come from peasant lineage. So you come from peasant filth, and they didn't even want anything to do with you. You were actually technically lower than a slave. They needed the slaves as a utility. Yeah, they saw them as subhuman, but they also saw these subhuman slaves more valuable than the peasant. And what's so insidious and diabolical is that slaves undercut the proletariat. The reason why you're a peasant is because of the slave system. If they have slaves, they don't need to hire you. You're looking for work. Why the hell are we going to pay you for work when we have slaves doing it for free? Here, have a slave fix my car or pay this peasant. You know what I mean?
Right.
Here, pay, even if you want to get into prostitution, the oldest profession, pay this dirty peasant or pay this slave where I can shower her up and rape her whenever I want. And then they'll have mulatto offspring, and ooh, they're a little bit lighter, so they're more exotic. I'll rape them too. From a
Yeah,
slave trading mindset, it's like, bro, slaves were more valuable than your peasant lineage, and you're shitting on descendants of slaves. It's idiotic, bro.
yeah. And what hurts is they do this, and the loudest on they're the loudest on social media, and they're boosted because they don't want us talking. They they don't want good engagement. Um,
Bingo. And then
they prefer that.
that's why people are like, here, I'm not gonna invite Brian to speak into my space because he's one of them. And even if he does say something I agree with, in the back of their mind, they still think that you're just one of them. Especially if someone goes to the page and you're like, yeah, we're all brothers, and they're like, damn, he following Nick, all this other shit. And I do think just simply following someone is not the full thing, because I'm kind of like you. I don't follow all these people, but you know, I do got at least a couple right wing anti black accounts that follow me, but I follow them as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I
Yeah,
do want to go out there. So I don't think just simply following someone, but when someone has been marginalized and traumatized for so long, some of these red flags they see are just a little bit too glaring for some people. But me personally, I try to have a nuanced perspective, because I do know that there is they have it. It was called, I think, Beacon's Rebellion, where it was like black and white. I can't remember. I can't remember if they were Irish or Italian. I think they were Irish, but they were rebelling against the powers that be, and that we were fighting alongside each other. So that's why they start codifying and adopting people into whiteness to say, here, yeah, you're a peasant, but you're better than them. So, and then, give them a couple trinkets and stuff. So there's always been a plot to keep us divided. In many instances, like right now, that, the whole Carmelo Anthony thing, right? It just brings out people's biases that they already had, right? What the hell did you have
Right.
to do with that? Nothing. But then people will bring up, see, this is why, we need to smash the patriarchy because white. I'm like, what? That had nothing to do with patriarchy. Then they'll start bringing up black literacy rates. It's like, this dude was an honor roll student. Like, why are you bringing that up? And then it's like, what about BLM? It's like, this had nothing to do. You see what I'm saying? Like, they'll bring up
Right.
everything to keep us divided rather than talk about here just this instance, because there was another instance in Texas too. I think the kid's name was Kason Allison. Did you hear about that?
If I'm not that was going on. That was like a month before, right? And he had stabbed another classmate and killed him, right?
Correct. And they actually agreed to fight. They met up in the bathroom and agreed to fight. And I think that he claimed that they were jumping him. He said that he only stabbed him once. The dude stabbed the kid like 7 to 10 times, like in multiple places, right? So he lied to the cops multiple
Jeez.
times. He agreed and said that he was gonna fight. He was telling that his girl that he was saying like some violent things and wishing death upon the dude, saying that he wanted to kill him. Then he actually did kill him, and it was a mutual agreed upon fight. And they let him off. He was in, and he had a lower bail than Carmelo Anthony, and I think he had to do like 2 years probation or something like that. No outrage. He stabbed a Hispanic dude. No outrage from the Hispanic community. No outrage from the white community, but everybody is focused on Carmelo Anthony is a thug. And then they were trying to raise a legal fund. It's a capital murder case. His lawyer is going to
Oh,
be expensive. They send money, and then they say, oh, well, we're gonna fund a white chick calling a black kid a nigger because that's the same. Like, what the fuck? The
oh yeah.
logic is just
Yeah.
all
It's
over the
just
place.
yeah. And the the sad part is going to the last topic of the of your list here with the clicks and likes. You know that's sadly what it's become, where people are not engaging in conversation but putting together thoughts out there just to and content out there just to get that engagement, and it's sad, but it goes to it, it's who's really at fault. Is that content creator, or is it the companies? But the companies don't do anything unless the government says it's okay. So does that, I know it's conspiracy hat theme, but you know if the government cracked down on some of these social media companies with material, do we still see that do we still see that content? I don't think so. I think it's allowed both of them parties.
Correct. Yeah, because that's ultimately what it's about. Because then you won't be challenging power. We'll be challenging each other. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So
Yep.
it will be someone living in a trailer park who's white. It will be a black dude living in the hood. They're both making around the same money. It's just they're in different environments. One is in a trailer park, one is in a project, making the same money. And then they're talking about you have a low IQ. It's like, bro, you are about the same education level, right? But the only difference is one group is holding whiteness above because there's a racial hierarchy. Before any of us were born, there's a racial hierarchy that has been established. And unfortunately, if people are poor and destitute, they lean in on their whiteness and then they start, blaming black. It's almost like the kind of the punch down. Like if there's an ugly chick, right, and she knows
Right.
that she's ugly, she's like, damn, I'm looking at all these pretty girls. Oh, look at this chick uglier. Oh, damn, that bitch is so ugly. Like she finally found someone uglier than her. So it's kind of like one of those things like, yeah, we're poor, man, but we ain't like the blacks. Oh, look at those blacks, and
Right.
man, I couldn't live like that.
Yeah.
It's like, do you see yourself, bro? Like, you know what I mean? And so then,
I
go ahead, bro.
yeah. I think this be the last thing I want to point out here, but I think that most of the people online, especially online stuff like that, have no have no experience with FBA freedmen, Black Americans. They don't, and even if they may have one coworker, they don't
No, that's a
socialize out of work.
documented fact, actually.
Yeah,
I
we
they, no, I just want to
that's
say
and
this.
that's part of
Most of the neighborhoods now are more segregated than it was during Jim Crow. They say about like 75 to 80 percent of white people don't live near any freedmen. So to your point, you're like there is statistics behind it. But go ahead, bro.
right, and that's the problem is um, depending on the certain areas. Like growing up in the Midwest, Metro Detroit area, Metro Detroit's you could call it highly segregated. However, it's pretty peaceful. Different groups, but everybody kind of intermingles when it comes to say, you know, you know, I at one time was into watching street racing. Well, that's everybody under the sun watching street racing, going to the drag strip, going to the football games. So we spend time together. We rode motorcycles together. Most of my base selling motorcycles was with FBA Freedmen. So I've been to black bike club rallies in their parties after work with some of my black coworkers. My
Damn, how
first
was
experience in
that? Bro, you got to tell me a little bit about that before you go home. You was at the Black because I know some people, some Rough Riders, Black Bike Set. They got they have some prominent riders out here in the Bay Area, San Francisco, Oakland, Pittsburgh, Sacramento, Fresno. So I just briefly, how was that? Because that sounded a little bit lit. You was at the party, you was at a clubhouse or what?
well they would hold like parties and rallies and get-togethers, and then we would sponsor like a bike night, and we would go to like say downtown Detroit, and it was always a lot of fun. um the Rough Riders, yeah, the Rough Riders were around. They were an emerging club. They weren't, the Rough Riders are not one percenters. I'm not. It's just it's a different. The Rough Riders are considered more like a social club that have motorcycles, and then obviously car clubs and things like that. It's big, real big. I don't know. I've been out of that for a long, long time, but some of the other clubs were like they were patches. These guys were these were like one percenters and things like that, and super cool, great customers of mine. And I sit down here. I had multiple different customers from, the Jewish businessman buying 3 jet skis for his vacation house to the dog fighter that fought pit bulls. So um, it was really great, valuable experience to learn and engage with a bunch of people different from myself, and that kind of molded me, and then you know here we are.
Yeah,
But I hate
no, and that's what I was gonna say. That shaped your perspective and your point of view of FBA versus other people. Their view was shaped from, well, I seen Boys in the Hood, and then I watched the LA News Channel, and then there was a drive-by in the hood. So that means that this movie is accurate. And that's just how black people are. Like whenever they say about black people, they start saying, "Oh yeah, well, Little Wayne, in this rapper and Jay-Z or LeBron and all this, but they don't want them to be measured by just some random athlete, right? And I'll just pick any random
Right.
one, Johnny Manziel or Pete Rose, uh, you know, it, whichever one, McGuire, right? You guys are cheaters, man. The white community is cheaters, man, with steroid. Like that. That it would never be framed like that. It's like Mark McGuire took steroids, okay? Like move on.
Right.
But but with us, if LeBron James does it, it will be like, see, this is the issue with the black community. LeBron grew up with a single mom. If his dad was there, he wouldn't have. It turns into like a psychoanalysis, and it's like, no, if you actually went to you know, go to the white cookout and go to the black cookout, right? You
Yep.
may prefer the white one because there's a bunch of white people, but you actually might have more fun at the black one. But people don't want to admit that because it's just like, it's the blacks. It's like, but you are the one saying don't make it about race and color block. It's like for real. Let's have a dance contest. You bring your best white people, we'll bring our best black people. Let's have a football contest.
Right.
You bring your best white, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that we need to do this, but that's kind of what they're wanting to do. And then when people are like, all right, cool, let's just do that, then it's like you're
Right.
hating against white people. It's like, nah, we are the ones who started. Oh, damn, you get an invite to the cookout, but nobody says that about us. Like if I whip out and start doing some some honky tonk dance or some country two step, which a lot of freedmen did start, they'll be saying stick to rap, shut up and dribble. It's
Right.
like there's the open invite is kind of like one-sided. So I think that kind of also falls into like some of the rejection, and I think there's been reception where people are like, here, let me see what he got to say, and then there's also rejection because there have been, we are the most invited, like, here, so and so could come to the cookout. Here, sure, you can do
Right.
hip hop. Here, man, sure, yeah, we did rock, but here, you want to do it. So all of our invitations have been exploited, right? It's like I invite you to my house, come on over, and then next thing you know, you're like, this is my house now, and now I have to find somewhere else to live. So that's how the
Right.
calculus that many are looking at it, and it is unfortunate because like I said, it's a collective analysis. But the only way that you will see, like, right, the only way I'll be able to test your temperature is to be close enough to check the temperature. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's like one of those things: damned if you do, damned if you don't. But if you don't, you'll never know. Right? Like if you do, then I can say, okay, this person was a snake, or oh damn, maybe this person wasn't a snake. But if I don't, then it's just speculation, and I have to assume. Typically people assume the worst to rationalize, right? Like I didn't try to build with him because he's just like those other crackers. You see what I'm saying? Like people try
Right.
to find a
Oh yeah.
reason, like he's just like that racist cop. Like actually, he's not. Like so on the flip side, I don't want everyone thinking, man, he's just like that thug that killed my son. It's like, no, he's not. Like he actually disagrees with that person. He condemns that person. But you won't know if I'm just, looking at you through this automatically negative lens.
That's right. That's right. And we should set this up again. You know let's
Oh
plan on
yeah,
talking. I got let
yeah. No,
in
it's
the
all good.
future.
Yeah, no, it's all good. We can do more regular ones. Obviously, I'll be on camera, but you don't have to be on camera. You already cammed up, but whenever you want to, the camera is always optional. You can put it on for 5 minutes, turn it off, or whatever you prefer. But yeah, this was just kind of like an introductory ones to build the rapport. But going forward, there will be more news cycles, and a lot of this stuff is just kind of the same stuff rehashed that people keep
Yep.
building up. Like a lot of those fight videos you see, like, look at these black people, like man, some of them will be in a bro. I seen videos in Haiti and then they're putting it on FBA. I seen videos. I'm like,
Oh
this
yeah.
video is from 19, bro. Literally seen one from like early 2000, like a Y2K. Remember that panic? It was like a Y2K
Oh yeah.
fight video. And people were like, "See, this is just a problem." So it's kind of like pornographic to some, so people
For
ain't
sure.
gonna people ain't gonna want to see, the union. They gonna say, "Oh man, why are you with this low IQ savage?" And others is gonna be like, "Why are you with this pale monkey, man? He ain't." You know what I
Right.
mean? So it's like, hey, we just got to go against the grain. Somebody got to do it, right?
That's right. And I look forward to talking to you guys, talking to you again, man. And I hate to
Yes, sir.
hate I hate to jet on you, but
Oh no, it's
I
all
look forward to doing another one.
no, yeah, it's all good. So just tap in with me and we'll do this soon. Appreciate you for your time
For,
and have a blessed day.
for sure. Hopefully people listen to us.
Some will, some won't, but we still got to put in the work.
All right, right. Some might be upset. I don't know.
That means it's effective.
Right. All right, be easy. Take it real.
All
Take it
right, for
easy.
sure. Peace out,
All right.
bro.
Bye.
Okay, and that was a great discussion.